What's going on, crew? This video is going to focus on my experience attending Brown University. If you can't tell by looking at me, I am not a current student, nor am I a recent graduate. I actually graduated from Brown around 10 years ago. So if you're interested in hearing from an alum's perspective that attended Brown undergrad between 2008 and 2012, keep watching this video. I first heard about Brown when I was a sophomore in high school. I was taking one of those state mandated / required courses that you needed to take in order to graduate. And for some reason, Mr. Wolin decided to start talking about college. And he mentioned that he had a son that was going to this school that had 0 requirements because of this thing called the open curriculum. And that's really what intrigued me about Brown, because compared to all the other schools that I was evaluating at the time, all of them had the 2-year required courses load with, mandatory math and science, chemistry, and all of that. And the idea of having to spend half of college taking all of these required courses just seemed fucking bonkers to me. I was a strong student, but I hated that I had to take these required courses in high school, and to continue that pattern in college was just really unattractive. So heard about Brown, researched the hell out of it, applied early decision, and was lucky enough to get in. So now that I'm in, let's go through some pros. The first pro that I want to touch on that I've kind of alluded to already is the open curriculum. The open curriculum is super dope because you get to study whatever it is that you want from the get-go. Now, I don't want to make it seem like Brown's the wild, wild west. There are majors, which are called concentrations, and some of these concentrations do have required courses that you need to take before you get to more advanced levels. Like in biology, you have to take Introduction to Biology, chemistry, same concept, but you don't have the 2-year required course load that other colleges have. But where the open curriculum really shines is the fact that it's afforded to everyone at the university. So what ends up happening is that most of the students that are in that class also really want to be in that class, which just ends up producing a really intellectually stimulating learning environment. The second pro on my list that probably overshadows the first one once you get to truly appreciate what Brown stands for is the quality of the people. The quality of the people, the students, the faculty, and the staff is just top notch. Everyone is super smart, super driven, intellectually curious, very generous with their time, very competitive, but more with themselves and not in a cutthroat manner, which just really produces an environment that allows you to bring out the best that you have to offer, and you make really quality connections with a ton of people there. So the quality of the people is top notch, and even if you're not able to get into a place like Brown, I would highly encourage you to find students that embody behaviors or values or characteristics that you want for yourself. You are the average of the 5 people that you hang out with the most, so seek out the people that exhibit those kinds of characteristics that you want for yourself. And that's important because it's going to ensure that you have a support network through those 4 years and beyond that's able to sort of help you and propel you on whatever goals you have in life. The third pro that maybe goes without saying, but I have to include it in my list, is the brand reputation. Brown is an Ivy League school, and I can't tell you how many times people started treating me much better when they found out that I went to Brown or that I worked at Google. And it sucks that that's the way the world still kind of works in a lot of regards, but it's the way the world kind of works. And I do see 10 years out that the world is shifting away from that kind of a mindset. There are a lot of these well-known companies or new startups that are starting to realize that there's a ton of competent, qualified, really smart, ambitious people that just simply didn't get lucky enough to get accepted to a selective school like Brown, and they're starting to do more to recruit from those kinds of schools. But in a lot of ways, I think Brown and the Ivy League and any top 20 school still holds a lot of weight. And for my experience specifically in technology, it definitely opened up a lot of doors that would have been a lot harder to open if I hadn't come from a place like Brown. All right, that wraps up my pros. Let's move over to some cons. The first con that I have to talk about is that Brown doesn't have as strong of a school spirit in the way that a Duke University or a U of I would have, for example. And that's okay if it's not your thing. It certainly wasn't my thing, but I did look at some of the experiences on Facebook that my friends were having, and I thought that it would have been really cool to be able to be at a basketball game or a football game and experience all of the excitement with the rest of my classmates cheering on our sports team. It's not for everyone, and I'm not going to cry about it, but it was a con that I think is worth mentioning because it would have been cool to have that kind of school spirit. There's a lot of school spirit in the sense of school appreciation and love, but it's not at the same level of like going to a basketball game at Duke, for example. So if you're into that kind of stuff, then Brown might not be for you. The second con that I have to talk about is the lack of advising. Maybe things are different now, but between 2008 and 2012, I felt that Brown could have done better to introduce us to different types of career paths. They did a good job of bringing in people from investment banking, consulting, or finance. But what that did to me, at least, was internalize that that was the gold standard and that's what I needed to strive for. And I had no idea that there were these other sort of types of companies, types of roles, and types of positions and functions and career paths that I could have explored. And so, one thing that I would recommend if you're, wanting a bit more academic support and you're not getting it, is to create a free LinkedIn profile, which is a professional networking site, and reach out to people at different schools or at different companies or different positions that you find interesting to start growing your professional network and to start getting that insider scoop of what it's like to go to a certain school or work at a certain company. You as a student have a ton of privilege, and I'm sure there's going to be a ton of people that are going to be willing to talk to you because we were all students at one point. And so reach out to people, get the inside scoop, and what you'll be doing in the process of that is start building your professional network, which is going to be extremely important for internship opportunities and full-time job opportunities, because most jobs don't get filled by people that applied online. They get filled by internal referrals. So the quicker you can start getting into the networking game, the better. The third con, which really isn't even a con anymore, but it was at the time, was that Brown is situated on top of a hill, like a literal hill. So if you wanted to leave campus, you had to either walk there or take public transportation, which was spotty at best. We did have this one service called Zipcar, which you could basically reserve a car for 1 to several hours, half a day, or the full day, but it wasn't that helpful for spontaneous trips in the middle of the night or towards the evening. And I think ride-sharing services like Uber and Lyft now make that con obsolete, but at the time, it really didn't make it easy for us to leave campus. And after living in Providence for the last 5 to 6 years, I realized that there's just so much that the broader community has to offer. So I would encourage, wherever you end up, take advantage of the broader community, go explore and have an interesting time with your friends, because chances are there's going to be something cool that you stumble into outside of your campus. And that wraps up my cons, 3 pros and 3 cons. And now I want to talk about whether or not I would do it all over again. And the reason why it's not a hell yeah is because tuition is getting pretty ridiculous. And there aren't that many career paths that really provide you a salary out of college that allow you to quickly pay back that debt. I went into technology, so I was able to start earning 6 figures 1 year after Brown. And that allowed me to be able to pay back a lot of my student debt. I graduated with about $80,000 in student debt. But I also worked at Google, and I lived right next door to the campus where I worked. And Google provided 3 square meals, free laundry services, and my transportation was basically just crossing the street and I was there. So I didn't have a big cost in the food category or in the laundry category and transportation and gas. And I also lived in a 3-bedroom apartment with 4 roommates. So because of that, I was able to save a ton of money and pay back my student loans quickly. But I don't think that there are many career paths that are able to pay you $100,000 straight from college. And so if I were to look at it again, graduating with $80,000 in debt, $100,000 in debt, $150,000 in debt, I think it's just not practical anymore because of tools like LinkedIn that allow you to basically find anyone that you want and be able to send them a message and get on their radar, like their post, leave a comment on their post, and start forming that kind of relationship. The barriers of entry to these kinds of, authority figures at these companies is so low now that I'm not sure graduating with $80,000 of debt is worth it. Did I have a great experience? Yes. Did it really mold me into the person that I am today? Absolutely. But if the price tag was to graduate from a place like that and have $80,000 or more in debt and not be able to graduate with a 6-figure job, I think that I wouldn't do it. I think now that I'm 31 years old, I really fully appreciate how important it is to be investing in the stock market or in real estate to grow your wealth overall. Money is not a concept that a lot of high schoolers or college students really think. They're still trying to figure themselves out, and I get it. But money is such a practical need in today's day and age. It doesn't buy happiness, but it buys dignity and psychological safety. And what I mean by that is, if you have a ton of debt you're going to have to feel the pressure of working a job that's potentially unfulfilling because you have to make those payments and get rid of that debt. And that really affects with your psyche psychologically, because you're going to be unhappy and it's going to carry over in other parts of your life. And you're just going to go through this spiraling effect of not being able to get out of that rut that you're in. Whereas if you graduated without a ton of debt, you can have that dignity to be able to say, you know what, this isn't working out. I'm going to walk away and I bid you farewell. And that's what I mean by dignity and psychological safety. I can't tell you, how many times there's just a small emergency that comes up, and having that cash to fall back on, to know that you can afford these little emergencies, that you can afford to help out family members that are in need, is super important. And graduating, if the cost of graduating from a place like Brown is $80,000 and it's going to take you 10 plus years to pay back, I probably wouldn't do it. It's just not worth it from that practical standpoint, especially today where companies are starting to recruit from other universities and where not investing in the stock market is such a big opportunity cost. I didn't really start investing in the stock market until I was, 28. I started buying things when I was like 25, but I didn't really get aggressive until 28. And I wish that I would have been able to get more aggressive in my early years, because I would have had a lot more money now that I'm 30. I'm certainly grateful for the experiences that I've had and the money that I've been able to accumulate, but part of me does wish that I would have gotten started a little bit sooner. So if you're a high school student, if you're a college student, keep that in mind. Try to keep the debt that you're going to be graduating with as small as possible, pay it back as quick as possible, and then move on to investing in the stock market or in real estate, because the quicker you start investing in those kinds of financial spaces, the more money you're going to be able to produce, the quicker you're going to be able to get to psychological safety, and then be able to dictate how you want to be able to spend your time. So I'm rambling a bit at this point. If you found this video helpful, leave me a like. If you have any questions about anything that I talked about or didn't talk about in this video, leave a comment below, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, crew. See you later.